Yo, I'm the MC of Ranting Rebel Poetry, and I'm a history and my identity. I'm independent, a red cottage industry, DIY from here to eternity. Let me tell you what's been going on. I take inspiration from centuries long gone. Oral tradition of sedition, that's my position. No court jester with a tame disposition. Poetic license? 35 years I've had one. And they don't come easy, they're not handed out for fun. You have to earn it, work and sweat and move, not get stuck in a dead poet bore groove. I earn mine in dirty, scummy punk clubs, art centres, rock gigs, festivals and dodgy pubs. And yes, once or twice I've had to fight. But when a fascist hits a poet, the poet's doing something right. I love words, and I love them in the red and raw. I like to use them in ways that have not been used before. I want you to laugh, I want you to think as well. Bollocks to TV, this is live as hell. Oral tradition, the real origins of poetry. Attila The Stockbroker, Ranting Rebel MC, Dean of the Social Surrealist University. Welcome to my wild poetic journey. Cheers. Ruby, we're going out in a minute. You don't whine. Sound like Morrissey. I'm someone who travels all over the world doing my poetry and music, but where I come back to is here. We live just over there, just the other side of the port. Port towns anywhere speak to me. I feel at home there. I feel there's a part of me that's there. But this is my home. I mean, you know, and the contrast between travelling around all over the place and coming back to somewhere that you've known all your life is wonderful. Living in a brave new town, things can often get you down. Not much to say, not much to do. Existence gets on top of you. Some folks say, well, why not go and meet a girl in a disco? But I don't want to walk that far, so I go to the foyer bar. We go there and we sit together. Uniform is jeans and leather, and we sit and drink and doze. We sit and drink and pose. Everything we say is cool. Big fish in a little pool, yeah. If you want to be a star, you'll make it in the foyer bar. On this harbour, I had one of the most incredible experiences of my life that I will never ever forget. Just the beginning of 1982, we were just starting performing, myself and my friend Stephen Seething Wells, doing our ranting poetry, and a mate came to a gig and recorded the gig, and then he said, I want to do a record of you know, live recording of your poems and put it out on a single. So we said, yeah, of course, Red, if you want to do that. I went, who's going to buy poetry on a record? And anyway, to cut a long story short, he made the record, Rough, Raw and Ranting, Attila The Stockbroker and Seething Wells, on the In Sainsbury's record label. And one night in March 1982, I was fishing and I was listening to John Peel. Then suddenly he said, now here's Attila The Stockbroker. And he played a bang and a wimpy, the first thing he ever played, one of my poems. They're into older women. 11 or 12's their favourite age. They chat them up as they come in, invade their space like space invaders. Oi, love, want some chips? Then invite them home for glue and a private rendition of the new Exploited single. Or some other manic mayhem to make their extremities tingle. Soon they'll be old enough to bunk into a disco, but till then they'll stick to the hamburger hustle. A bang and a wimpy and a bang. The grim and grimy gangsters from the Mustard and Crass gang. I nearly dropped my rod in the sea. It was like the most incredible thing. It was like, you know, you cannot overestimate how incredibly important John Peel was at that time. I mean, you know, he'd have these shows in the evenings, and, you know, 1 million people would be listening. And it wouldn't just be 1 million of people, you know, whatever. It would be 1 million people that were into the kind of stuff that he was doing. So if you were on John Peel, not just loads of people heard it, but the kind of people heard it who were most likely to be interested in what you were doing. And it had a huge and immediate effect on my life. I went from doing little spots, shouting in between punk bands at gigs, to doing my own gigs and, you know, 100 people turning up. Then I got a Peel session, 15 minutes to do my own stuff. And then another one. And that got me a record deal with Cherry Red and got me my first album out and my second album out and restarted everything off.
Radio 1, the most boring radio station in the entire history of the solar system. It's called Radio Rap. I turned on the radio this afternoon with half a brain for a mindless tune, and if you want some mindless fun, it's always there on Radio 1. The brain cell level is very low, a diminished brain cell ratio, and if your IQ's under 5, it's just the stuff to keep you alive. Synth pop and electro funk and endless hours of mindless junk. If that reflects our nation's taste, this generation's gone to waste. So where's the challenge? Where's the news? Where's the ones who light the fuse? Though I can see them all around, they never make the DJ sound, 'cause the senile top programmers get the bird if they hear an idea or a naughty word, so all we get to pass the days are endless boring pop cliches like shake your booty on the floor, hang your wombat out the door, want that flounder, hit that place, wrap that turbot around my face. Me, there's one man got the feel, it's true, good old John Peel, he talks to you, but most of the rest are as bland as can be with a taste of attention and flavour flea. So stuff it, Radio 1, the happy sound that's really done.
Attila The Stockbroker is a kind of, if you like, it's an identification point for me and what I do. And I love the contrast. I've always been very proud of the name, of the contrast between, you know, the Attila and the stockbroker, and the idea that some people say a stockbroker is a very, you know, upstanding member of society, and Attila is obviously Attila the Hun. But actually, anyone can see that since the so-called credit crunch of 2008, which I prefer to call the collapse of capitalism, I actually try and sort of want to say things actually how they are. Anyone can see the damage that stockbrokers have done to the world. So that's the point about the stage name, really. And especially good because it came out of an experience. You know, I was a clerk in a stockbroking company when I had the idea for the name. I love to make people laugh. I love just being silly sometimes. I have a fondness for a knob gag now and again, you know. And you're not supposed to like knob gags if you're also a serious political commentator. You're not supposed to do knob gags on stage. But I do both. I take the view that life is a multitude of things. Life is happiness, sadness. It's about a whole wide gamut of human experience, which goes from having a mum who died of Alzheimer's to being very angry about the political situation, to writing a disgusting poem about your mate's revolting, disgusting sleeping bag. Give Hester and Diamond their bonus. They deserve it, they do a good job. I want workhouses for the dull scroungers and a picture of Prince Harry's knob. I work for my gaffer for nothing. I'm grateful he gives me a job. I'll swap all your bloody trade unions for a picture of Prince Harry's knob. His knob, a picture of Prince Harry's knob. His knob, a picture of Prince Harry's knob. One more time. His knob, a picture of Prince Harry's knob. His knob. Here we have 3 corn snakes. Napoleon, Josephine and Emma. Let's get Napoleon out. Napoleon's asleep, but there we go. There we go. This is Napoleon, about 11 years old, male corn snake, fully grown. And of course these are they're domestic bred. They're not wild animals that have been sort of caught. They're as domesticated in their own way as a dog or a cat. I've always said I want to take poetry to places where poetry doesn't normally go. That is the whole point of what I do. I'm the antithesis of the out-of-touch poet in the tweed jacket. And I'll tell you something else. As a poet who reads, you know, poetry blogs and things like that, I've seen so much stuff recently about how poetry, we can't publish poetry anymore, it doesn't sell. We can't get grants, you know, the grants have all dried up. There aren't any grants for poetry books anymore. We can't put out our books anymore because you can't get grants for them. I'll let you into a secret. I do all my books myself. The reason I publish all my own poetry books myself, the reason is, in the old days, I had a publisher. They did 5,000 copies. I had to pay 60% of cover price to sell them at my gigs. Most of the copies that were sold, I sold at my gigs. After a bit, I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm paying more than 50% of the cover price to sell books that someone else has put out. Why don't I do it myself? My dad died when I was 10, and some of my fondest and best memories of him are him taking me to football. I mean, it was him that introduced me to the game. He was a big football fan himself. And some of my strongest memories of him were of him taking me to watch the Albion, and one specific game where Chelsea hooligans were throwing the old style pennies sharpened at us, which is again mentioned in the poem. Just a long life supporting Brighton, and then in the 1990s, when this bastard, to make no bones about it, Bill Archer, gained control of our club, gained control of the shares of our club for £56.25, and basically told us, I run this club now, I'm going to do what I want with it. He called us half brains. He said, I own this club lock, stock and barrel. He said, and he lived 256 miles away. And we basically had to save our club by forcing him and his horrible little partners, David Bellotti and Greg Stanley, out of the club. And we did that, the fans did that through non-violent legal direct action. When we played away games, a group of us would go and pay him a visit at home. Once we had a big march through his village with a big banner, at the front saying Archer out. And I wrote a poem which we put through every single letterbox so all his neighbours knew just exactly what so-and-so he was and what he was doing to our club. My love of the Albion and my political convictions coalesced. So one of the campaigns that I'm most proud of was the genuine grassroots campaign by thousands of Brighton fans to save our club and to bring us to the beautiful new stadium we've got now. The battle's only just begun, but we have won the war. Our club, though torn asunder, will survive. And I salute each one of you who stood up and said no and fought to keep the Albion alive. And one day, when our new home's built and we are storming back, a bunch of happy fans without a care, we'll look back on our darkest hour and raise our glasses high and say, with satisfaction, we were there. In the year 2000, there was a National Arts Council initiative for people to be poets in residence at various places. And I was already doing the PA and very much involved with the club, had been leading the campaign, one of the leaders of the campaign to save the club for many, many years. And Dick Knight, our chairman, thought it'd be a really good idea for me to be poet in residence. So I started doing that. Basically what that meant was I was performing my poems on the pitch before home games.
This is our finest hour, and you're magnificent.
I've always said what I thought, and I've always come out very, very strongly with my politics. And at the same time, I want to give people a good time. There's nothing kind of dry or, one of the problems about the left in this country, and left generally, is they can be seen as being very humorless and trying to lecture people. I've never wanted to do that. I try and give people a good time and some ideas, and it's up to them how they deal with the ideas that I'm putting across. And loads of the time, I'm performing to people that don't really agree with my politics, but are enjoying the performance because they enjoy what I've got to say and the way I'm doing it. If you write the kind of poetry that people like, then they buy your books and they come to your gigs. And I know what the criticism is going to be about that. I mean, I'm completely aware. Most of the poetry establishment view not just me, but people like me as not really poets. We're kind of entertainers. They see us more of alternative comedians or whatever, not really part of the serious poetry world. I consider my poetry to be as every bit as valid as any of the stuff that's published in the Times Literary Supplement. But there's no such thing as a society. Don't blame us for being glad that she's dead. Now the bankers destroy the economy, and the poor and the sick get the blame. And our once proud and strong labour movement is shackled and timid and tame. But this poet will always remember the brave men and women I met. We will carry on fighting for justice and will never, no never forget. Cheers. I'm very angry about the world, but there's no way I'm going to shove that anger down people's throats. There's enough of it happening. People can see it for themselves. They don't need it. Many of them are suffering it more than I am. They don't need me to point it out to them. What I'm doing is trying to present an alternative, but above all, I'm giving people a good time. I'm there on stage to give people a good time, and that ultimately it's entertainment.
My dad died when I was 10, and well over 40 years later, I wrote this poem. And it's called Never Too Late. My father died when I was 10. And when she dried her tears, Mum met you in the choir. She's known of you for years. I was so pleased when she told me that she would be your wife, and I look forward happily to a new man in my life. But you were the classical singer who thought rock and roll was junk, and I was the Bolan boogie boy who soon became a punk. You were the civil servant for whom everything had its place, and I was the left-wing activist out there and in your face. Yes, you were the head of the household, and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much, and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent gentleman. So I went off to my own life, left you and Mum to yours. A few words about football, then the sound of closing doors. But the passing of so many years gave us both time to reflect, and slowly, oh, so slowly, we forged a new respect. When you were ill the first time and found it hard to walk, I'd take you to the hospital and we would sit and talk. It felt so right and normal, and it was such a shame that it had taken all this time. Both stubborn, both to blame. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent gentleman. When Mum came down with Alzheimer's, 5 years you cooked and cared, and we were round there every day, so many thoughts were shared. Your simple, honest loyalty. The vows you made, you'd keep. No longer the big boss man. Me, no longer the black sheep. Then came that day in hospital. The end was near. We knew. You told me, I do love you, John. I said, I love you too. You took my hand and squeezed it. Our eyes were filled with tears. The first time that we'd said that, it took 37 years. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent gentleman. It's never too late. Never too late. Never too late to say you love someone. And if it wasn't too late for me and John, then it's never too late for anyone. Cheers.